everyone. Whew, we're going to have an awesome conversation today. So, my name is Dr. Mekel. If you are new to this page, I am a licensed psychologist who specializes in grief and loss, and that's what you'll see on my page. You're going to see education, you're going to see inspiration, and lots of tools and nuggets to empower you to reimagine life after living loss. So, every single Friday, I have an opportunity to connect with someone out in the grief and loss and mental health community to basically shed light on this conversation around grief and loss. And as you know, if you are someone who is walking the grief journey, you know that it's very complex and layered, and there are lots of understandings and misunderstandings about it. So today I have the opportunity to connect again with a colleague of mine, a friend of mine named Shay. Her Instagram handle is @SafeSpaceWithShay. And we're going to talk about a topic that we started to go into on Monday, and namely that's toxic positivity in grief. We'll sort of unpack what that is and spend some time talking about it. So I know she's here. Hi, Shay. Let me send you the request, and then we're going to get you going. I'm so excited. So if y'all weren't here on Monday, we had Instagram breakdown. Hey, Shay.
Hey, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How are you?
Yes, good. How are you?
I am well, just excited that we're finally back on here.
Yes,
And
yes.
I haven't seen anything pop up yet.
Right. Fingers crossed. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that was the strangest thing.
Oh my God, yes. And when I started
Yeah.
seeing everyone else experience it, I'm like, okay, great. It wasn't just us. Because I'm like, oh my God, we were getting so
Well,
many
I
good
know
nuggets.
when I read the alert, it was like I thought I had violated something on Instagram. And I'm thinking, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'm in trouble. They banned my account. And I was
Yep.
like going in my mind going, I haven't done anything wrong. So I'm just glad it was a
Right.
universal thing.
That's it. Yes, for sure. Well,
Yeah,
thanks again for hosting this conversation on your page. It's
absolutely.
much needed, and yeah, I'm excited about the conversation.
Yeah. So if you guys are just joining, on Monday, we were talking about toxic positivity and the
Yeah.
role and impact it has in the grief space.
Mhm.
And basically, Shay, I think we're going to have to almost start over from
And that's
scratch.
okay. That's okay. Because you know what? What's important is for the people to receive the message. So,
That's right. Yeah.
yes, no problem. So, I'll start with the first question
Yeah.
I had. It
Yeah.
was, what makes positivity so toxic?
Yeah. So, positivity, like everyone is familiar with being positive and optimistic. And in the face of experiencing any kind of hardship, there is a role for positive thinking and optimism. And I'll give sort of an example. When we look at the health psychology space, this relationship between mind and body, there are study after study after study that sort of note that optimism and experiencing hope can actually yield better health outcomes. And so there certainly is a space for being optimistic, thinking positively about your life circumstances, and so forth. The problem with toxic positivity, on the other hand, is that it really is sort of a philosophy, if you will, where people are sort of solely relying on positive thinking as the sole means of cure or the sole means of addressing any sort of hardship. And so basically, it's a really ineffective way of managing the day-to-day things that are going on to the exclusion of other sources, if you will. And
Mhm.
that's where the problem comes in, because it's almost like an obsessive positive thinking approach, which we know, right? You can think positive all day long, but that can't by itself be the sole tool in the toolkit to feel better. So that's really the
Got
problem
it.
with toxic positivity.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So, how do you think we got to this point? this toxic positivity point?
You know what? So I was thinking about this the other day, because it does seem like toxic positivity is sort of like a buzzword in,
Yes.
contemporary times.
Uh-huh.
Yet, I think that as a society, we've sort of gradually been getting to this place, right?
Mm.
So I'll answer this by saying, "Hey, somebody's saying hello.
Hey,
Hi, hi,
hi.
Tiffany." um, I think we got to this place because historically, I think we've always been a society that has been pain avoidant, right?
Mm.
Pain aversive, meaning that in the face of hardship, in the face of trials and suffering, we don't want to deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think within the realm of mental health, which
Mm-hmm.
is patterned in some ways from the medical perspective, when people come into the medical facility, right, there's an ailment, there's a symptom that they're having, and when they get into the medical space, the solution often is, okay, let's address this thing to take your pain away, right? And so the mental health has almost been sort of an outgrowth of the medical realm. And we know, though, that in mental health, sometimes leaning into the pain, right, is
Mm-hmm.
where the cure, is where the
Yeah.
solution actually resides.
Right.
But we've been conditioned to believe that any sort of pain is problematic. And we
Mm.
do anything possible to not
Yeah.
feel that pain. And so I think we've been swinging towards this other end of the pendulum with
Mm-hmm.
toxic positivity for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And now in this space of like, if I think it, it's going to manifest. If I believe the best
Mm-mm.
things, I'm going to experience that. If I
Yeah.
only look on the bright side, then I can affect the outcome. We've been doing things to get to this place for quite a while.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, too, it can kind of be a detriment to our progress of how we're coping. And so
Hmm.
I think it's a very fine line. We don't, we need a more defined line in that, right? Like, okay, am I like kind of losing touch of reality, not
Hmm.
really considering what's really going on in real life and knowing that I'm
Absolutely.
going to go through these things, and like you said, kind of leaning into it.
Right.
And that's one of the things I learned with emotional intelligence, right? It's like
Mm.
our emotions are information, and, we take time to process that, you can easily navigate through those. So,
Yeah. Well,
uh,
one of the things, I'm glad you said that, that emotions are information. So
yeah.
I'll often sit with folks in my practice who will sort of categorize, positive and
Mm,
negative emotions.
right.
And I really work with them to sort of dismantle that, right? Any
Mm.
emotion can be used for evil, if you will.
Okay.
Right? But
Yeah.
inherently, emotions aren't good or bad, right? They
Uh-huh.
really are just pieces of information.
Right.
And so, for example, anger is an emotion that people tend to associate with negative.
Mm-hmm.
However, anger, if used appropriately, can be fuel to affect change in a positive way, right?
Yes.
And if we think about some of the greatest things that have happened in maybe our own lives and in the world, at the core of it was turmoil. At the
Mm-hmm.
core of it was sort of anger and a
Yeah.
desire for something different.
Yep.
So I think it's really important to sort of think about emotions from a global perspective, that it really is just information
Yeah.
to know that something in the environment has shifted. And
Mm-hmm.
if we can get curious about what that shift is,
That part.
then we're empowered to be able to use the information in a healthy way.
Yes,
Yeah.
excellent, excellent. Thank you, Dr. Mekel. So, how would you relate like toxic positivity with the grief process? Like, how does it show up?
Yeah. So again, toxic positivity is sort of like this very positive mindset, positive thinking, focused approach to living. So the ways that this shows up in the grief process is, and I'll sort of use the example from people who are supporting the grieving person.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes this shows up in the things coming out of people's mouths, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here are a few examples of what toxic positivity could sound like. And but before I share this, I want to give a caveat. I never believe that the intent of any supporter's heart is to hurt, right? I think that people's intentions are positive in general, and I think that people really want to be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
However, sometimes with it, when we're not really thinking, it can come across in this toxic positivity way. So an example of this would be something like, a person's experience a death or a loss of some sort, and the supporter saying something like, well, just look on the bright side, right? Which, yes, on the surface, we certainly don't want the person to just, linger in
Mm-hmm.
dismay and be in this a sad space. At the same time, when you're grieving, sadness is part of it. Frustration is part of it. Anger can be part of it. So to say, let's just look on the bright side, is a complete minimization, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
complete denial of the person's reality within the
Right.
grief journey.
Yeah.
And so that's where it becomes problematic. And to the receiver, it can feel really dismissive,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this person doesn't even appreciate the pain that I'm going through. That's where we
Right.
have to be careful with what we're saying.
That's
Yeah.
good. And I wanted to ask you too, just because like we're in this new space, right? This mental
Hmm.
health and mental awareness space where we're learning and we're learning how to cope with grief and
Hmm.
life hardships and things of that nature. But it's challenging for me personally when like if I'm going through something and I'm, expressing my grievance to someone, but they don't know how to support. So it's frustrating for me because it's like,
Hmm.
oh
Hmm.
my God, like you just don't feel heard, you don't feel supported. So
Right.
can you speak a little to that as far as like I know we all are evolving. Everybody isn't on the same level when it comes to, being able to provide adequate support. But
Hmm.
can you kind of speak to the person who may be going through something and it's like they feel like they're the only ones that, know what they need, but they're not getting it? I don't know.
Yeah, and this won't be a stretch for me at all because I have personally been there.
Okay.
Where I've sort of reached out to someone in that space of grief and
Yeah.
realized I was coming up against someone who, didn't really have the capacity for whatever reason to hold that.
Yeah.
And so I think for the griever, right,
Mm-hmm.
one of the difficult aspects of grief is that sometimes we make assumptions that those closest to us, perhaps our family, our close friends, are
Mm-hmm.
going to be the supporters, right? And it makes
Yes.
sense.
Right.
We have the most intimate connection with these people, and we think simply inherently because of that, that they're going to be able to hold that space for us.
Right.
And so when we experience this moment where we're like, wow, they completely denied or just diminished how I was feeling, or they couldn't address it at all,
Mm-hmm.
we feel really disheartened.
Right.
So, one thing that I challenge folks, including myself, to do with this is to really manage expectations,
Come on
right?
now. That's
And
good.
yeah, and I'll give an example that I didn't come up with, but I love this analogy. So the analogy is, let's say you are a gallon, right? You have a gallon worth of needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Often, if you have a gallon worth of needs, you'll go to someone and sort of approach them to support you, and you expect them to fill up your gallon, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
have a gallon worth of need.
Right.
Well, some people, and this is not to minimize or condescend anyone, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people may only be able to offer a pint, and that's okay. That pint is something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other person might be able to offer half a gallon. The other person might offer another pint. And so I really sit in the space with grieving folks to have them think through, let's really look at this person's capacity. What
Mm-hmm.
are your expectations of them? And then let's also talk about what it is realistically that they're able to offer, right?
That part. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if they're only offering a pint, it's okay to take their pint and say
Mm-hmm.
thank you and realize you still have some more to fill up. Okay, let's look at who else is in your social circle. What
Mm-hmm.
might they be able to bring to the table so that you aren't experiencing the death as a whole and also these subsequent deaths as you
Yes.
sort of feel defeated and not seen. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does definitely. And I was
Yeah.
just gonna add too. I know a lot of people who experience loss, they tend to connect with other people who may have lost a father or a mother or a sister or whoever.
Hmm.
And maybe it could be cancer related or something else. Like you
Yep.
connect to those people who have experienced a similar loss. So I know I've heard that that is a really good support to have.
Absolutely. I think that one of the great things, and again, this is not to say that only other grievers can understand what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
one of the beautiful things about connecting with other grieving hearts is
Mm-hmm.
that there's some subtleties that we in this community just sort of know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of comfort I have found with being able to talk to other people who've experienced the death of a loved one, right?
Yeah.
And to feel comforted that I don't have to explain what that is. I can
Yes.
just sort of show up and be seen without having to break down all the nuances. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend that we connect with other grievers and know that
Yeah.
that can be a great space of support.
Yes, excellent. And then also, going to see a therapist who
Hmm.
specializes in grief, Dr. Mekel.
Absolutely. That's
So
what I do here.
that's the icing on the cake too. So there are
Yeah.
ways to navigate around the grief process and getting
Hmm.
through it.
Hmm.
You don't get over it, but you do learn to cope with it. And
Right.
you want healthy coping mechanisms going forward. So,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
and thank you for just confirming and affirming that grief
Yeah.
is not something that we get over.
Right.
I often say, just as love has no expiration date, neither does grief. And so you may grieve for the rest of your life if you have connected heart to heart with someone on any
Mhm.
level. And so to not put the pressure on yourself to think that you've got to end your grieving at a certain
Mhm.
place. Just know that you can walk alongside it and you learn to sort of observe grief in your life and also observe other things that are happening, including joyful moments and
Right.
positive, healthy memories and other social connections and so forth that help you basically turn down the volume of grief, even
Mhm.
though it's still there. It's still there
Yes.
on any
Yes.
given day.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, thank you. And another thing I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
what are some ways I guess we can kind of educate people on this positive, toxic positivity? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I know when you call people out, some people get offended, right? And so maybe not in that moment, but
Hmm.
like, hey, like, how could you just, I don't know, how can we
Yeah.
just educate people so they can be more conscious of how they approach the
Yeah.
next time they.
So obviously conversations like this, I think
Yeah,
just sort of naming it for what it is. Because I think,
right.
as I mentioned before, who are supporting people who are grieving, I think they're always coming from, or usually coming from a great place. Their
Yeah,
intent is not to inflict additional pain,
right.
but I think there's just so much ignorance with regard to what to say and what not to say and so forth that people feel in those silent moments. They've just got to say something.
That
And
part. Oh
that's
my
where, yeah, that's where we've got to be really careful that we don't
God.
slip into cliches, that we
Right.
don't slip into toxic positivity statements or just statements like, well, aren't you over that yet? Right. So just completely dismissing things.
Oh my
So one of the ways to do that, I'll do a little plug here. If anybody's watching, I did an entire webinar on this. It's called How to Show Up for Someone Who is Grieving.
Mm.
And basically, I'm using kind of a 6-part framework. And so if you're interested in that, go to my Instagram page and click on my link in the bio. And it'll take you to a free webinar that you can watch. It's about 30, 40 minutes just to sort of, understand how to show up for someone in that space. And then also, I think that folks who are grieving, right,
Mm-hmm.
have a role in educating the people who are supporting them.
Mm.
And this is a tough thing because obviously as a grieving person you're exhausted,
Yeah.
and the last thing you want to be doing is educating people.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, as your energy sort of is available, to know that there's a space for that because people around you may feel disempowered and not be sure
Mm-hmm.
what they need to be doing. So it's
Yeah.
okay to tell someone, hey, this would be most helpful. I like
Right.
it when you call and say this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or
Mm-hmm.
when you text that, I didn't find that to be as helpful. Here's another thing that may be helpful, right?
Right. Oh my God.
So, as a bit of an aside, I'll share sort of a pet peeve that I have, and this is just me. This is not grief and loss as a whole. When my mom died, of course, everyone was sort of. I remember posting about her death and her memorial service on Facebook, and within seconds, right, there were so many. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss, and that was so problematic for me. Because for me it felt like, wow, they didn't really even fully digest what's going on here within like 10 seconds. It just felt like for me it was something just to quickly type and, oh,
Yep.
I checked off, right? I
Uh-huh.
did
Uh-huh.
my
Uh-huh.
grief thing. I'm
Yeah.
supporting.
Right.
So that's always been a phrase that I have not embraced. So when I've had friends who will say that, I'll help them with the language that I do want to hear. Like,
Okay.
tell me more about your mom.
Right.
That must be really hard for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if they knew
Yeah.
my mom, I know you and she had a really close relationship. When you think of her, what comes to mind? Like, that's more supportive for me than I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
But again, it sort of came down to me educating the people around me so that they know
Mm-hmm.
what exactly to say.
Right. That is so
Yeah.
good. I'm so glad you shed light on that too. And another thing, as you were talking, I was thinking, I remember reading about grief, and the author was talking about sometimes just sitting with that person in silence, like just putting your hand on their shoulder or rubbing their back or holding their hand, like those nonverbal ways you can
Hmm.
show that support. Like you said, you don't
Yep.
necessarily have to say anything, but just being present with them in that moment. And I thought, how
Hmm.
powerful, right? I feel like we feel the
It
need to say
is.
things because we've always, I mean, your mama did it, your grandma, your aunties, right? And so, but they were just in this constant state of just, okay, just be there, like, just do. And now we can
Yeah.
consciously like sit back and be more aware, and present of our
Hmm.
actions. And I thought that
Yeah.
was just so beautiful and so powerful.
It is. I love the idea of grief being witnessed. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that for grieving hearts, and this is based on research and also just clinical experiences and my own over the years, that's the one thing that people have felt most supported in, is to know that the other person, whoever they were able to witness the pain, not fix it, because there is no
Right,
fixing, right?
right, yeah,
There's no cure, there's no solution,
right.
but to simply witness the pain, like sitting in the pain with the person, is
Mm-hmm.
so profound, because it's in that space where non-verbally you feel as if the other person is able to understand, right?
Yes,
Versus when people show up and they're doing things to fix, you
mm-hmm.
feel diminished. Like, wow, why
Right.
can't they just witness
That,
this heartache that I'm experiencing right now,
yes,
right? And there are no words that can be
right,
said
right.
to
Yeah,
solve the problem, if you will.
yes.
Um, One of the things that's so fascinating to me, so I've been doing grief and loss work, dedicated work for the past decade,
Mm-hmm.
and I will sit with clients often, and I am, I obviously know the importance of witnessing and sort of listening. People will leave the visits. I just had a visit a couple weeks ago with a woman whose husband died, and after she came back for the next visit, she said, "Oh, Dr. Harris, I just loved the last time that you said X, Y, and Z." And in my mind, I thought, I never said that. I never said
Mm,
that. However, in that moment of her feeling like I was witnessing, she
mm,
heard certain things that were comforting to her, right?
right.
And
Yes.
so it was really profound. I didn't correct her, but
Yeah.
I was in my mind thinking, all I did was listen. But the listening was so
Yes.
profound and the witnessing was so tangible that she sensed something within herself that she needed. And so it's a
Yes.
really powerful tool.
It is. I'm so glad you said that because,
Hmm.
often, people come to me to vent. And like afterwards, they're just so thankful. And I'm like, well, I really didn't say anything. But
Yeah,
it's just allowing them that space to talk without any interruptions,
that's right.
whatever they're thinking, they're flowing with their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not judging, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
interjecting. I'm waiting for that moment, if they want
Yeah.
me to speak or say, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like,
It's a
wow,
powerful thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and
it is.
I think from the therapist side, you'll probably agree with this. Like
Mm-hmm.
therapists, like we got into this field ultimately because at the core, we believe that people have within them what they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that as I've grown in my career over the past, 20, 25 years, I realized that it's really not about me.
Mm-hmm.
People will come to me, and I think there's always different reasons that people seek us out.
Right.
And some people do want us to fix their issue, but the reality is when you allow a person a witnessing space and
Yes.
you're not telling them what to do, it's a reminder to them and you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like everything you needed to get through this moment, whether it be heartache, suffering, or joys, was already within you.
Yes.
It's already there. It just took a witnessing space for you to be able to unearth the truth that it already was inside of you all along. And I think that is just so, so beautiful every time I
Yeah.
see it. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And
Yeah.
one last point I want to make. I know we centered this conversation around grief and toxic positivity,
Yeah.
but also going through life stressors, hardships, heartbreaks,
Hmm.
ending of relationships,
Yep.
all of that
Facing
stuff.
facing COVID-19, all of these losses.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I think it all requires that much needed space to, just have your thoughts heard and,
That's correct.
just grieving that in a sense, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think when we obviously like on my specialty and sort of what I do on my Instagram page is primarily focus on the death, like the physical death of a
Yeah.
person.
Mm-hmm.
However, grief can manifest in many different ways. It's not just
Right.
physical death.
Yeah.
For a lot of folks, it's the intangibles, like
Yeah.
the loss of an identity that you thought you would
Right.
hold at a certain age, right?
Yeah.
Or a loss of expectations or dreams can be equally as
Mm.
devastating. And
Yeah.
so grief is sort of a universal, comprehensive catch-all, but
Yeah.
within that are many different facets
Yeah.
that all require attention and
Yeah.
witnessing. Hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, of
Thank you,
course,
Dr. Mekel. I think that's
of
all the
course.
questions I had lined up. This was very
Yeah.
good. I am just so always in awe of you, and the knowledge that you share is just like, yes.
No, it's so funny, Shay. So, I post on Instagram daily and try to give, really valuable content for people.
Hmm.
When I tell you that the toxic positivity post, I've been posting consistently for this entire year,
Hmm.
that one post,
Uh-huh.
I think it garnered like almost 400 likes.
No way.
Yeah, and this is in
Wow.
comparison to other stuff that I post that
Yeah.
garners a decent amount of
Right.
likes and comments and shares.
Right.
So that let me know that we are on to something
Yes.
because and a lot of people were back channeling and like sending me DMs saying, you know what,
Wow.
I've experienced this, or I don't feel like other people are supporting me because of toxic positivity.
Yes.
I'm tired of hearing. And so this is like
Yes.
such a hot topic. And so
It
I'm so
is.
grateful that, we're talking about
Oh,
it.
yes. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited too. Yes.
It was
Yes.
like
Yes.
perfect timing.
Yeah,
And so
it
I was
really
sitting here
was.
thinking like, I don't know. I'm like, maybe I need to do some sort of,
Like break down like subcomponents of toxic
yeah, I was
positivity.
thinking like
Yeah.
little mini videos. I don't know, but I felt like
Right.
it hit such a nerve with so many people
Yeah.
that I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, we are landing on something really
That's it.
good.
Listen, the seed is planted. All you gotta do is nurture it. Let it grow.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, I
Someone,
am.
I'm just commenting, someone
Yeah.
saying, awesome topic. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Letty,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. We always appreciate
Yes, we
your
so
presence.
appreciate everyone
Yeah.
who views, who shares, who
Yeah.
engages. I'm just so glad that I could be a vessel and a light to people, and and have these public conversations that really help everyday people, because we all
Absolutely.
are navigating through something. And
Yeah.
if you could see our conversation and be like, oh my God, they get me, then it's worthwhile.
And you know what? I want to add here, if you're watching this and let's say you're on the receiving end of a comment that feels toxically positive, I know from my own personal experience, I think that tendency is to sort of just get irritated, get angry about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's completely human and normal and so forth. At the same time, remember in those moments that you are empowered to help educate and shine a light to the person who may be saying it, to really help them and to know that they probably didn't intend when they said, oh, you know what? It's a blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when has anybody's death ever been a blessing in disguise? But
Right.
these are things that people say, and so when it hits your eardrum, try to let the anger
Subside. Let it
subside in a little bit,
subside.
and as much as you possibly can to say, you know, that's a great comment for maybe a different circumstance, right? I wonder if we might be able to think of it this way. And again, that takes a lot of emotional energy to do. And I know that is exhausting, but to think about, and I used to work at this organization, and one of their phrases was to always assume positive intent, right?
Mm,
Always assume that when people
okay.
are saying and doing things, that their intent is positive, even though what may be coming out of their mouth is completely crazy to your ear,
Right, right.
right? So if you can hold that in your heart, it helps you better respond and then also educate people who need it,
Yes,
who
yes.
absolutely need it.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
I love that little nugget.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need
That's,
them. We need
we
them
need
for
it.
sure. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mekel. I appreciate your time and
Yeah. Does
rescheduling.
anybody out here have any questions? There's several folks in here. I've
Okay,
been waving at people. So know
okay.
that even though Shay and I are talking one on one, we
Mhm.
certainly want to include you in the conversation. So
Yeah.
let us know if you have any questions or have any comments, or maybe even personal experiences with regard to this topic. That's always really helpful
Yeah,
to
for
us.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. I love it.
So tell me
Mhm.
what's happening in your world, Shay, while we're sort of waiting for people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what's going on with you?
Just trying to get my brand going, Safe Space with Shay, trying to get a podcast up and running. So
Oh,
that's on my neck.
okay.
Yeah, definitely.
What's gonna be your primary like focal point on your podcast?
Um, it's just awareness, self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely going to continue to have the mental health professionals on,
Uh-huh.
just shedding light for people who are, like I said, just kind of managing stuff day to day, right? Stress management, emotional intelligence and regulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've had such a huge response from that, just because I think that's an area that we really didn't have exposure on, especially people of color. And
Yeah.
so being
Yes.
able to, yeah, identify, label those emotions and
Mm-hmm.
processing it and how we regulate it so we can respond in appropriate manner. So
Yeah, I love that.
I just love being able to just connect with people and just knowing that, people get it. Like, oh my God, this is so needed. Like, I appreciate it. So
Yes.
yeah.
That's
And then I
so
want to do
good.
some relationship questions. I mean, conversations too. That's always a
Well,
hot one.
yeah, whenever I see your page, I've been noticing, I'm like, I'm wondering if relationship, because I can tell you sort of like that by what you post.
Yes,
And
yes,
so,
yeah.
and that is
Hmm.
definitely needed for
Oh
sure.
yeah, for sure. So I'm like, yes. So I'm networking, getting some
Yeah,
positive responses.
that's
It's
awesome.
it's it's just exciting, and I'm so grateful for the platform that I have. And even though the pandemic was a damper, it allowed me to kind of really branch out and
Mm-hmm.
start these online conversations on
Yeah.
social media. And
Yep.
I mean, like I said, it's just been a really strong, good, consistent feedback. So people seem to be getting some good stuff out of it.
Yeah, I love that we, just as a mental health profession as a whole,
Hmm.
sort of
Hmm.
like we're able to pivot in the midst
Yeah.
of relatively easy to like an online sort of platform.
Yep.
And I know in the middle of the pandemic, I sort of quit my full-time job to go off as a solopreneur.
Okay.
And it's been a blessing just to be able
Okay.
to sort of create my own journey and
Yeah.
content and have fun with different things,
Yes.
and sort of do it on your own terms, which is fun.
That's awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well,
So
I'm just
thank you for bringing up this topic, and it is
no
definitely hot.
problem. I
So
know, right?
yeah,
Thank you so much. And I'm sure
absolutely.
you'll save this so I can repost it on my page as well.
Yeah. What you know what's crazy, and
Hmm.
if anybody on Instagram in the Instagram solar system is out there, what you cannot do with videos is tag people, which is crazy.
Oh, really?
You can put someone in the comments. Like I can
Oh, that,
say, in the comments, but like
yeah.
on a still picture, you can
Yeah, you could
tag.
tag.
You can't
Yeah.
tag on videos, which is
Oh,
crazy
wow.
to
Oh,
me.
yeah. Instagram, get it together, please, and thank you.
Yeah. Like, come on, it's
That'd be great.
2021.
Yeah.
Yes, 2021. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll this will definitely be on the replay, and then I'll
Yeah.
add you in the comments and
Okay.
then post
Sounds
it in my
good.
stories for other people to
Excellent.
catch it. So,
Excellent.
all
Excellent. Well,
right.
thank you so
Yeah,
much, Dr.
so good to
Mekel.
see you
Good
again.
seeing you too. And you enjoy this beautiful weekend. I hope you guys are going to have beautiful weather. I know in
I hope
Michigan we're,
so,
yeah.
because we have literally come out of hell with heat indexes of 110.
Ooh,
So yeah, it's
yeah.
sort of like, whoo, give us
Relief,
a break.
please. Yep.
Yes. Give
Bring
us
it
a
on
break,
it.
please, God.
Yeah. I hope it's coming.
I know. Well, you have a great rest of your
Yeah.
day, my
You
dear.
too.
And
Thank you. All
be
right.
in
I'll
touch
talk to you.
soon.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
bye.